The warning lights turned red across the station's control panel. Do-hyun looked up from the circuit board he was repairing and frowned. Something was wrong with the airlock in Section 7. The pressure readings were dropping fast. "Ambassador Hee-jin, we have a problem," he said into his communicator. "Someone's stuck in the outer airlock. The seal is failing. Can you fix it from there?" Hee-jin's voice crackled back. "No, I need to go there manually." Do-hyun was already moving, grabbing his tools and a safety suit. "Be careful. We can't afford any incidents on our first day." Do-hyun ran through the corridors of the Crossroads station. This place was massive, built by dozens of alien species as a neutral meeting point in space. Humans had only arrived yesterday. Everything was new and strange. The walls glowed with soft blue light. The air smelled like flowers he had never seen before. And everywhere he looked, there were aliens. A tall creature with 4 arms stepped aside to let him pass. Another one, covered in scales, watched him with 3 eyes. Do-hyun didn't have time to be amazed. Someone was dying. He reached Section 7 and looked through the window. A female figure stood in the airlock, her hands pressed against the inner door. She was beautiful in a way that made his breath catch. Her skin had a soft silver glow and her eyes were large and violet. She wore flowing white robes that seemed to move on their own. She was an alien, but her expression was easy to read. Fear. The outer door was opening slowly. Something had broken in the mechanism. In less than a minute, she would be sucked out into space. Do-hyun saw other aliens standing nearby, but they weren't helping. They were talking to each other, pointing at screens, discussing solutions. One of them, a tall male with the same silver skin as the trapped woman, shouted orders at the others. There was no time for orders. Do-hyun pulled open the emergency panel next to the airlock. The circuits inside were completely different from Earth technology, but electricity was electricity. He grabbed 2 wires and crossed them. Sparks flew. The outer door stopped moving, but the inner door was still locked. The woman in the airlock looked at him through the window. Her violet eyes were wide. He could see her trying to breathe, but the air was getting thin. "Hold on," Do-hyun said, though she probably couldn't hear him. He looked at the lock mechanism. It was electronic, protected by a code system. He didn't know the code. He didn't have time to learn it, so he did what any good engineer would do. He broke it. Do-hyun took his largest tool and smashed the control panel. The lock clicked. He grabbed the door and pulled with all his strength. The door opened and the woman fell forward into his arms. They both collapsed on the floor. She was heavier than she looked, and Do-hyun's shoulder hit the ground hard. Pain shot through his arm, but he didn't care. She was breathing. That was what mattered. "Are you okay?" he asked. She looked at him with those strange violet eyes. Then she touched his face with her hand. It was warm and soft. Do-hyun felt something strange happen in his mind, like a gentle knock on a door. Suddenly he could understand her, even though she wasn't speaking any language he knew. "You saved me," she said, and her voice was inside his head. "Why?" "Because you were in trouble," Do-hyun said. "Why else?" She stared at him like he had said something completely insane. The other aliens rushed over. The tall, silver-skinned male pulled the woman to her feet and checked her carefully. "Princess Lyra, are you hurt?" "I'm fine, Voth," she said. But she was still looking at Do-hyun. Princess. Of course she was a princess. Do-hyun stood up slowly, holding his sore shoulder. "You're human," Voth said, looking down at Do-hyun. He was at least a foot taller. "Your species has only just achieved light-speed travel. Yet you dared to interfere with Valerian technology?" "Your technology was killing her," Do-hyun said. "I fixed it. You destroyed a very expensive security system. I saved a life. Isn't that more expensive?" Ambassador Hee-jin arrived with 2 other humans. She looked at the broken panel and the rescued princess, and Do-hyun could see her trying to figure out how much trouble they were in. "Please forgive my engineer," Hee-jin said, bowing slightly. "He meant no disrespect." "Disrespect?" Princess Lyra said. "He saved my life while everyone else stood and debated." She looked at Voth, "Including you." Voth's face went darker, the silver turning almost purple. "I was organizing a proper response. I was dying." "The princess is right," said another alien, a massive creature covered in dark armor. "The human acted while we wasted time. There is honor in that." He looked at Do-hyun with eyes that glowed red. "What is your name, human?" "Do-hyun. I'm Commander Kale of the Draxian Empire. You have my respect." He turned to Lyra. "Princess, perhaps these humans are more interesting than we thought." Lyra smiled, and Do-hyun noticed that her smile looked almost human. "Yes," she said. "Perhaps they are." Later that evening, Do-hyun sat in the human quarters trying to write his incident report. His shoulder still hurt. Ambassador Hyejin had already lectured him about following proper diplomatic protocols. She wasn't angry exactly, but she was worried. Humans were the newcomers here. They couldn't afford to make enemies. The door chimed. Do-hyun opened it and found Princess Lyra standing outside. "Can I come in?" she asked. This time she was speaking out loud in perfect English. "Of course." Do-hyun stepped aside, suddenly aware that his room was tiny and messy. He quickly pushed some tools off the only chair. Lyra sat down gracefully. "I wanted to thank you properly. In Valerian culture, saving a life creates a bond. I am in your debt." "You don't owe me anything," Do-hyun said. "That's not how it works." "Then consider the debt paid. You learned English for me." "That's thanks enough," Lyra laughed. It was a beautiful sound. "I didn't learn English. I touched your mind in the airlock." "We can do that, my people. We can connect with others telepathically. It allows me to understand you and speak your language." "Oh." Do-hyun felt uncomfortable. "You can read my mind?" "Only if you let me." "And only surface thoughts," she tilted her head. "When I touched you in the airlock, I felt something strange. Most beings think of themselves first when in danger. They calculate survival, advantage, cost. But you," she paused, "you just wanted to help. No calculation. No expectation of reward. Is this common for humans?" Do-hyun shrugged. "I guess so. We help each other. That's what makes us human." "Fascinating," Lyra said softly. She stood up. "I should go. But I hope we can speak again. Anytime." At the door she stopped and looked back. "Do-hyun, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why did you risk your life?" "You barely know me. I'm not even your species." Do-hyun thought about it. "Does it matter what species you are?" "You needed help." "I could help." "That's enough reason." Lyra stared at him for a long moment. Then she smiled again, and this time there was something different in her eyes. Something warm. "You are a very strange human, Do-hyun. I'll take that as a compliment." After she left, Do-hyun went back to his report, but he kept thinking about those violet eyes and that strange feeling when she had touched his mind. He had met dozens of aliens today, but she was the only one who made him feel like maybe, just maybe, humans and aliens weren't so different after all. On the other side of the station, Lyra stood in her chambers and looked out at the stars. Her attendants had tried to convince her to rest, but she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the human, about his simple answer to her question, about the way he had looked at her like she was just a person who needed help, not a princess or a prize. In all her long life, no one had ever looked at her that way before, and it made her want to know more about these strange, short-lived creatures called humans. The planet Valeris looked like something from a dream. The entire surface was covered in crystal structures that caught the light from two suns and split it into a million colors. When the human ship landed, Do-hyun pressed his face against the window like a child. "It's beautiful," said Sunwoo, his friend and fellow engineer. "It's showing off," Ambassador Hyejin said, but she was smiling too. The Empress of Valeris herself greeted them at the palace. She looked like an older version of Lyra, with the same silver skin and violet eyes, but where Lyra's expression was warm, the Empress looked cold and calculating. "Welcome to Valeris," she said. "My daughter speaks highly of you." "We're honored to be here," Hyejin replied. That evening, the Empress made an announcement that shocked everyone. She was holding traditional courtship trials for Princess Lyra. Any worthy suitor could compete for her hand. The winner would not only marry Lyra, but would forge an alliance between their species and Valeris. Do-hyun watched from the back of the Great Hall as dozens of alien nobles stepped forward. They were impressive, each one a prince or commander or lord from powerful civilizations. Prince Voth was there, tall and proud. Commander Kale stood with arms crossed, confident. There were others too, beings that looked strong and dangerous and important. "This is politics," Yuna whispered to Do-hyun. She was the human team's xenobiologist, smart and observant. "The Empress is choosing an alliance, not a husband for her daughter." "Does Lyra have a choice?" Do-hyun asked. "In Valerian culture, the trials prove worth. Whoever wins proves they're strong enough to deserve her. It's supposed to be an honor." Do-hyun frowned. Sounds more like being treated as a prize. Later that night, Lyra found him on one of the crystal balconies. She moved silently, appearing beside him like a ghost. "You didn't volunteer," she said. "I'm not a noble. I'm just an engineer." "You're more than that." She looked out at her world. "The trials begin tomorrow. There will be tests of strength, intelligence, and power. The suitors will try to impress me with their accomplishments. Will it work?" Lyra smiled sadly. "It's what's expected. I've watched these trials before for my cousins. The strongest always wins. The richest. The most powerful. Is that what you want?" She turned to look at him. "What I want has never mattered much. I'm a princess. My marriage is a political decision. That's not fair. Life rarely is." She touched his hand gently. "But I asked my mother to include you in the trials. As a representative of humanity." "What?" Do-hyun's eyes went wide. "Why?" "Because I want you there. And because your ambassador will face pressure to participate. Earth is new to galactic politics. Refusing would be seen as an insult. So I have no choice. You always have a choice, Do-hyun. That's what makes you different." The trials began the next morning. The first challenge was a test of strength. Each suitor had to lift a massive stone block carved from Valerian crystal. Prince Voth lifted it easily over his head. The crowd cheered. Commander Kale lifted 2 blocks at once. The crowd cheered louder. When it was Do-hyun's turn, he looked at the block. It was at least 3 times his weight. He couldn't lift it. He didn't even try. Instead, he examined the block carefully. Then he built a simple lever using a piece of metal and a smaller stone. He used the lever to lift the block off the ground. The crowd went silent. "Is that allowed?" someone asked. The Empress looked at Do-hyun with interest. The challenge was to lift the stone. He lifted it. "Continue." Voth's face went dark with anger. "He used a tool." "That's cheating." "It's engineering," Do-hyun said. "My species doesn't have your strength. But we have our minds." The second trial was a test of wealth. Each suitor presented gifts. Voth brought rare jewels from across the galaxy. Kale brought the tribute of 3 conquered planets. Others brought technology, art, and treasures beyond imagination. Do-hyun brought seeds. "These are from Earth," he said, kneeling before Lyra. "Each one is different. This one grows into a tree that produces fruit. This one becomes a flower that blooms in spring. This one will grow vegetables that can feed a family." He looked up at her. "Your planet is beautiful, but everything here is crystal and stone. These seeds will bring life. Green life. They're not worth much money, but they're worth something else. Hope, growth, the future." Lyra took the seeds carefully, holding them in her palm like they were made of glass. "Thank you," she whispered. The other suitors laughed. "Seeds?" Voth said. "The human brings weeds while I bring the wealth of worlds," but the Empress didn't laugh. She watched her daughter's face, and she saw something there that made her thoughtful. The third trial was combat. Each suitor had to demonstrate their fighting skills. Voth moved like liquid metal, his combat form perfect and deadly. Kale fought with the raw power of a warrior race, destroying practice targets with ease. Others showed skill that would have taken humans centuries to learn. Do-hyun stepped into the arena, and everyone expected him to fail immediately. He didn't have armor or advanced weapons. He just had a simple staff. His opponent was a warrior from a race that had mastered combat for 10,000 years. The warrior attacked with speed and precision. Do-hyun lost badly. He was knocked down 3 times. His lip was bleeding. His arms were bruised. But every time he fell, he got back up. "Stay down, human," the warrior said. "There's no shame in knowing when you're beaten." "I know I'm beaten," Do-hyun said, wiping blood from his mouth. "But I'm not done yet." He got up again. And again. And again. Finally, the Empress raised her hand. "Enough. The human has shown his spirit, if not his skill." That night, Do-hyun sat alone in the guest quarters, nursing his injuries. Sunwoo and Yuna had tried to cheer him up, but he had sent them away. He felt like an idiot. He couldn't compete with these beings. They were stronger, richer, smarter, and better in every way. "You didn't fail." Lyra stood in the doorway. She came in and sat beside him, gently touching his bruised face. Her hand glowed softly, and Do-hyun felt the pain fade away. "I lost every challenge," he said. "You won something more important. You showed me who you are." She smiled. Voth lifted the stone to show his strength. "You lifted it to solve a problem. Kale brought treasures to show his wealth. You brought seeds to give me something I don't have. The others fought to prove their superiority. You fought to show that you don't quit. I still lost. Did you? Every other suitor did what they do best. They showed me their peaks, their maximum abilities. But you... She touched his chest. You showed me your heart. You did things you weren't good at. Things that hurt you because I asked you to be here. That's not losing. That's sacrifice. Do-Hyun didn't know what to say. Tomorrow is the final trial, Lyra said. Each suitor will spend a day with me, showing me what life would be like as their partner. Voth will take me to his palace. Kale will show me his empire. They'll display everything they can offer. What should I show you? Lyra smiled. Just be yourself. That's all I want to see. The next day, while the other suitors prepared elaborate plans, Do-Hyun took Lyra to the human ship. It was tiny compared to the alien vessels, cramped and simple. This is where we live when we travel, he said. It's not much. He showed her the engine room where he worked. He let her help him repair a circuit board, teaching her how human technology worked. They ate simple food in the mess hall. He told her stories about Earth, about oceans and mountains and rain. Then, as the day ended, he took her to the observation deck. I want to show you something we have on Earth, he said. Something I think you've never seen. He dimmed all the lights in the ship. The observation deck went completely dark except for the stars outside. What is this? Lyra asked. Wait, Do-Hyun said. They stood in silence. Then slowly Lyra saw it. The stars were moving. The ship was turning and a planet was rising into view. But unlike Valaris with its two suns, this planet was covered in shadow on one side. Darkness, Lyra breathed. True darkness. On Earth the sun sets every day. We have night. In the darkness we light fires. We tell stories. We look up at the stars and dream. Do-Hyun stood beside her. Your world is beautiful, but it never stops shining. You've never known what it's like to rest in the dark, to find peace in silence. Lyra reached out and took his hand. They stood together, watching the dark side of the planet, and for the first time in her long life, she understood what it meant to simply be still. They'll offer you everything, Do-Hyun said quietly. Power, wealth, status, I can't compete with that. All I can offer is this. Moments. Small quiet moments that don't cost anything but time. Time, Lyra repeated. You humans don't have much of it. Your lives are so short compared to ours. Every moment costs you more than it costs me. Maybe that's why we value them more. Lyra looked at him, and in the darkness of the observation deck, her eyes glowed soft violet. Do-Hyun, I need to tell you something. Tomorrow I have to make my choice. Whoever I choose will change everything. I know, but I've already decided. She squeezed his hand. I just hope my choice doesn't start a war. The announcement ceremony was held in the grand hall of the palace. Every important species in the galaxy had sent representatives. The air felt heavy with expectation and politics. Lyra stood on the crystal platform wearing ceremonial robes that seemed to be made of light itself. The Empress stood beside her, cold and regal. The suitors lined up below, each one confident they had won. I have made my choice, Lyra said. Her voice carried through the hall without effort. I choose Do-Hyun of Earth. The silence that followed was like a physical thing. Then chaos erupted. This is an insult, Voth shouted, his silver skin turning dark purple with rage. She chooses a primitive over princes and lords. Over her own kind. Commander Kyle's eyes glowed red. The human is nothing, weak, short-lived. What can he possibly offer that we cannot? Other suitors joined in the protest. The hall filled with angry voices from dozens of species. Only Ambassador Hyejin looked more worried than pleased. She understood what this meant politically. The Empress raised her hand for silence. My daughter has made her choice according to tradition. The trials are complete. The trials were a joke, Voth said. The human failed every challenge. He has no right to this honor. He has the right I give him, Lyra said firmly. You all showed me your strengths. He showed me something different. Something I value more. What could that possibly be? Asked a suitor from the elegant Sylvian race. What does this human have that we lack? Lyra looked at Do-Hyun, who stood uncomfortably in his simple uniform while everyone else wore grand armor and robes. He sees me as a person, not a prize. That's everything. This is politics, not romance, Kale said coldly. Your marriage will create an alliance. And you choose the weakest species in the galaxy? You shame Valaris. I honor it, Lyra replied, by choosing freely. But the protests didn't stop. Over the next few days, the rejected suitors formed a coalition. They sent formal complaints to the Empress. They demanded a new challenge, a final trial that would prove once and for all whether humans were worthy. The Empress, under pressure from multiple powerful species, agreed. There will be one final test, she announced. The Arena of Champions. It is an ancient tradition, used only when a choice is disputed. Do-hyun will face challenges of combat, strategy, and endurance. If he succeeds, the marriage proceeds. If he fails, she looked at her daughter. You will choose again from the remaining suitors. Mother, no, Lyra said. This isn't fair. Neither is politics. Do-hyun accepted the challenge because he had no choice. Refusing would mean Earth lost all credibility with the galactic community. Ambassador Hyejin tried to prepare him, but there was only so much a human could learn in a few days. The arena was a massive structure, built for combat trials that went back thousands of years. Thousands of beings gathered to watch. Most expected the human to fail quickly. A few, like Yuna and Sunwoo, hoped desperately that he wouldn't. The first challenge was single combat against a Draxian warrior, one of Kale's best soldiers. The warrior wore powered armor and carried weapons that could slice through steel. Do-hyun wore light armor and carried a simple blade. Human technology couldn't match what the Draxians had developed over millennia. The fight began, and immediately everyone saw the difference. The warrior was stronger, faster, better equipped. He drove Do-hyun back across the arena floor. Each blow that Do-hyun blocked sent shockwaves through his arms. But Do-hyun didn't fight like the warrior expected. He didn't stand and trade blows. He moved constantly, dodging more than blocking. He used the environment, rolling behind pillars, creating distance, making the warrior work for every strike. He's running, Voth said with disgust. He's thinking, Lyra replied. The warrior grew frustrated. He charged forward with a powerful attack meant to end the fight. Do-hyun dropped flat to the ground. The warrior's blade passed over him. Before the warrior could recover, Do-hyun swept his legs out from under him. The warrior fell hard. His heavy armor made it difficult to get up quickly. Do-hyun was on him in a second, blade at the warrior's throat. Yield, Do-hyun said, breathing hard. The warrior stared up at him. Then he laughed. You fight without honor, human. But you fight to win. I yield, the crowd murmured. It wasn't an impressive victory, but it was a victory. The second challenge was strategy. Do-hyun was given command of a small force in a simulation battle. His opponent was a Sylvian general with centuries of experience. The general had superior numbers and position. Traditional strategy said Do-hyun would lose in minutes. Do-hyun ignored traditional strategy. He split his forces in ways that made no sense. He sacrificed units to create openings. He made choices that looked random but somehow worked together. What is he doing? The general muttered, watching the chaos. What Do-hyun was doing was something humans had learned from fighting each other for thousands of years. He was being unpredictable. The general's centuries of experience meant he knew every proper tactic, every logical move. But Do-hyun wasn't being logical. He was being creative. When the simulation ended, Do-hyun had lost more units but achieved the objective. Technical defeat but practical victory. The general stood and bowed. I have never seen such strange tactics. Your species must have very interesting wars. Too interesting, Do-hyun said quietly. The third challenge was endurance. Do-hyun had to survive in a hostile environment chamber for 12 hours. The temperature would shift from freezing to burning. The air would thin. There would be no food or water. Other species had evolved to handle extreme environments. Humans were from a relatively comfortable planet. Everyone expected Do-hyun to quit within hours. But Earth wasn't as comfortable as they thought. Humans had spread across their entire planet from frozen poles to burning deserts. Their bodies weren't specialized like other species. They were adaptable. The first hour, Do-hyun shivered in the cold. But he kept moving, kept his blood flowing. The second hour, the heat came. Other species would have suffered organ damage. Do-hyun's body did something strange, something most species had evolved past. He sweated. Water poured from his skin, cooling him naturally. The hours dragged on. Do-hyun's throat was dry. His muscles ached. His head pounded. But he stayed conscious. He stayed moving. He refused to quit. In the observation room, Kale watched with growing respect. The human is suffering. Why doesn't he stop? Because he can't, Lyra said. She was gripping the railing so hard her hands were white. His species never learned to quit. At hour 10, Do-hyun collapsed. Everyone thought it was over, but his eyes opened. He dragged himself back to his feet. "This is insane," Voth said. "His body is failing. He'll damage himself permanently." "He knows," Lyra whispered. At hour 12, the chamber door opened. Do-hyun stumbled out and collapsed immediately. Medical teams rushed to him. He was dehydrated, exhausted, and had a fever. But he was alive. He had passed. The final challenge was the worst. Kale himself stepped into the arena. "I will face you personally," the Draxian commander said. "No rules, no mercy. Fight until one of us cannot continue." This wasn't part of the traditional trials. This was personal. Kale felt insulted that Lyra had chosen a human over him. "Commander, this is not necessary," the Empress said. "I have the right to challenge. Ancient law." Kale's eyes burned red. "Unless the human is too weak to face me?" Do-hyun could barely stand. His body was still recovering from the endurance trial, but he stepped into the arena. "Don't do this," Lyra called out. "You've already proven yourself." Do-hyun looked up at her. "I know, but if I don't do this, they'll always say humans are cowards. I can't let that happen. The fight was brutal." Kale was a warrior who had fought for centuries. Do-hyun was an engineer who had learned basic combat training. It should have been over in seconds. It lasted 5 minutes. Do-hyun couldn't win. Everyone knew it. Kyle knew it. But Do-hyun kept getting up. Every time Kale knocked him down, he rose again. His nose was broken. His ribs were cracked. Blood ran from cuts across his face. "Stay down!" Kale roared. Do-hyun got up again, swaying on his feet. "Why?" Kale demanded. "You cannot win. You can only suffer." "Because," Do-hyun said through split lips, "I'm not here for power or glory. I'm here because she asked me to be, and I don't quit on the people I care about." He charged forward one more time. Kale hit him so hard he flew backward and didn't get up. The arena went silent. Kale walked over to Do-hyun's unconscious body. He knelt down and placed his hand over Do-hyun's heart. Then he stood and addressed the crowd. "I have fought warriors from 100 species. I have faced champions and heroes. But I have never seen courage like this." He looked at the Empress. "The human has proven himself, not through victory, but through spirit. I withdraw my challenge." Lyra ran into the arena, her powers already glowing as she knelt beside Do-hyun. She placed her hands on his chest and let her healing energy flow into him. "You fool," she whispered. "You beautiful, stubborn fool." Do-hyun's eyes fluttered open. "Did I win?" She laughed and cried at the same time. "You won something better. You showed them what humans are made of." That night, as Do-hyun recovered in the medical center, the galaxy's opinion of humanity shifted. They weren't the strongest species. They weren't the smartest or the most advanced. But they had something that many long-lived species had forgotten. They had the will to keep fighting even when everything said they should quit. They had the courage to face impossible odds. 3 months after the trials, everything fell apart. It started with trade disputes. Species that had lost the courtship began refusing to trade with Valaris. Then came border incidents. Valerian ships were harassed. Colonies were threatened. The Empress tried diplomacy, but the coalition of rejected suitors wanted revenge. They called it the Alliance for Galactic Order. Really, it was about hurt pride. Do-hyun was installing new communication systems on Valaris when the first attack came. Enemy ships appeared in orbit without warning. They didn't fire on the planet, but they made their message clear. Submit to the Alliance or face war. The Empress refused to submit. War began within hours. Admiral Tajan commanded the human fleet, what little there was of it. 6 ships, that's all Earth could spare, against the Alliance's hundreds. "This is suicide," Sunwoo said as they watched the tactical display. "We can't fight them all." "We're not trying to fight them all," Do-hyun said. "We're buying time for Valaris to call for help from their real allies." "And if help doesn't come?" Do-hyun didn't answer. They all knew what would happen. Lyra found him on the command deck later that night. He was working on shield modifications, trying to squeeze more power from systems that were already running at maximum. "You should go home," she said quietly. "This isn't your war. You're here. That makes it my war." "Do-hyun, look at the numbers. Earth can't win this." "Since when do humans care about the numbers?" He put down his tools and took her hands. "Besides, you chose me, remember? That means something. It means Earth stands with Valaris, and humans don't abandon our friends, even if it means dying, especially then." The first major battle happened near Valaris's outer moon. The human fleet faced 30 Alliance ships. It should have been over in minutes. Admiral Tajin had other plans. All ships pattern Chaos 7, he ordered. Sir, that's a theoretical tactic, his second officer protested. We've never tested it in real combat. Good. Then they won't expect it. The human ships split up, moving in directions that made no tactical sense. They flew too close to the moon, using its gravity in ways that should have torn them apart. They fired while spinning, making themselves impossible targets. The Alliance fleet tried to respond with their superior numbers and firepower, but they kept hitting each other. The humans moved too unpredictably, like insects that couldn't be swatted. One human ship was destroyed, then another, but they took 5 Alliance ships with them. They're insane, an Alliance commander said, watching the battle. This isn't strategy. It's chaos. Welcome to fighting humans, his tactical officer replied. The battle lasted 4 hours. The humans lost 3 ships but held the line. The Alliance retreated to regroup. In the palace, the Empress watched the battle reports with new respect. They fought 4 ships against 30 and survived. How? They fight differently, Lyra said. They don't have centuries of military tradition. They just have creativity and courage, and apparently no sense of self-preservation. On one of the remaining human ships, Do-hyun's sister Minji sat in her fighter cockpit, hands shaking. She had shot down 2 enemy fighters today. She had also watched her squadron leader die. You did good today, her wingmate said over the radio. It doesn't feel good. It's not supposed to, but you saved lives. Remember that. The war continued for 2 weeks. More Alliance ships arrived. More battles were fought. The human fleet was down to 3 ships. Valerian defense forces were struggling. Help from other species was still days away. Do-hyun realized they were going to lose, unless they changed the game completely. I have an idea, he told Admiral Tajin, but it's risky. Everything's risky right now, talk. The Alliance wants to make an example of Valaris. They want to show that defying them has consequences. But what if we make them the example instead? How? We infiltrate Kale's flagship and broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. Show everyone what this war really is. Not about honor or order, just about wounded pride. Tajin stared at him. That's the worst plan I've ever heard. You'd need to get past their entire fleet, board their most protected ship, take over their communications, and escape, all without being killed. I know. When do we leave? They assembled a small team. Do-hyun, Sunwoo, Yuna, and 6 soldiers. They would use a captured Alliance shuttle to sneak aboard Kale's flagship during the chaos of battle. Lyra insisted on coming. Absolutely not, Do-hyun said. It's my choice, remember? You don't get to make it for me. If something happens to you, then we fail together. She touched his face. You fought for me. Let me fight for you. The infiltration started well. They docked with the flagship during a battle, just another Alliance shuttle returning from patrol. They moved through corridors using Lyra's telepathy to avoid patrols. Then everything went wrong. Alarms blared. Blast doors sealed. They were trapped in the communications center, surrounded. Kyle himself appeared on the screens around them. Did you really think I wouldn't know my own ship was compromised? I've been watching you since you docked. Why let us get this far? Do-hyun asked. Because I wanted to speak with you, one last time. Kyle's image moved to stand before them. Surrender now and I'll spare your team. Continue and you all die here. Why do you even want this war? Do-hyun demanded. You're not a bad person, Kale. I saw that in the arena. This isn't about good or bad. It's about order. Respect. You humans disrupted everything by being chosen over species that have ruled for millennia. If we allow that to stand, what message does it send? That worth isn't measured in time or power? That weakness is acceptable. That any species can claim what they want without earning it. I earned it, Do-hyun said quietly. Maybe not the way you would, but I earned it. Kyle was silent for a moment. Perhaps. But it's too late now. Too much has been invested. Too many have died. Then let us send our message. Let the galaxy decide. No, I'm sorry, but this ends here. Soldiers poured into the room. The human team fought back, but they were outnumbered. One by one, they were subdued. Kyle entered the room personally. He walked past the captured soldiers until he reached Do-hyun, who was held between 2 guards. You should have stayed home, engineer. I was home. Anywhere she is, that's home. Kale looked at Lyra. Is he worth all of this, princess? All these deaths? This war isn't about worth, Lyra said. It's about fear. You're all afraid that the old ways are ending, that species like humans will change everything. And won't they? I hope so. Kale raised his weapon, pointing it at Do-Yun's chest. Last chance. Renounce your claim. Return to Earth. This war ends. Do-Yun looked at Lyra, then back at Kyle. No. Then you're a fool. Probably, but I'm a fool who knows what matters. Kale's finger tightened on the trigger. Then he stopped. His eyes went distant, like he was listening to something far away. Sir? One of his soldiers asked. Kale lowered his weapon slowly. The Alliance is withdrawing. What? Fleet Command just ordered full retreat. It's over. Do-Yun didn't understand. Why? The answer came from Admiral Tajin's voice over the captured radio. Because we sent the message anyway. While you were infiltrating, we hacked into the Alliance communication network. Every species in the galaxy just saw footage of this entire war. They saw who started it and why. On screens across the galaxy, beings watched the truth. They saw the rejected suitors forming their alliance. They saw the attacks on Valeris. They heard Kale's own words about pride and power. Public opinion shifted instantly. Species that had supported the Alliance turned away. Others threatened sanctions. The Alliance crumbled in hours. Kale stood in silence, processing what had happened. Then he looked at Do-Yun and did something unexpected. He laughed. You clever human. You made me think the infiltration was the plan, but it was just a distraction. We had to keep you focused on us while our fleet worked. I underestimated you. I won't make that mistake again. Kyle gestured to his soldiers. Let them go, Commander. It's over. We lost, he looked at Lyra. Not to human weapons or tactics, to human truth. They showed the galaxy who we really are. As the team prepared to leave, Kyle stopped Do-Yun one more time. In the arena, I said you proved your courage. Now you've proven something else. Your species doesn't just fight with fists and weapons. You fight with ideas, with truth. That's more dangerous than any fleet. Is that a compliment or a threat? Both. The galaxy will never be the same now that humans are part of it. I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but it's definitely interesting. On the shuttle back to Valeris, Lyra held Do-Hyun close. You scared me, she whispered. I scared myself. Was it worth it? He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the woman who had stood by him through everything. Yes, every second, even now? Even knowing you almost died? Especially now, because I know something for sure. What's that? That you're worth fighting for. Worth dying for if it came to that? Lyra pulled him closer. Let's try not to test that again. Agreed. But as they flew back to safety, both of them knew the truth. The war was over, but the real challenge was just beginning. They had won the right to be together. Now they had to figure out what that meant for two people from completely different worlds. And somewhere in the back of both their minds was a question neither wanted to ask out loud. She would live for centuries. He would live for decades. How do you build a life when time itself is against you? That was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight they were. 1 year after the war ended, the Crossroads station had been rebuilt and expanded. It was twice as large now, with new sections designed by human engineers working alongside alien architects. The result was something nobody had imagined before. A true blend of cultures. Do-Hyun stood in one of the new gardens watching earth plants grow alongside Valerian crystals. Sunwoo had designed the irrigation system. Yuna had figured out which earth species would thrive in alien soil. It was beautiful in a strange way, proof that different worlds could grow together. There you are, Lyra said, finding him among the flowers. Everyone is waiting. I know. I just needed a moment. Nervous? Terrified. She laughed and took his hand. You faced down a Draxian commander, but a wedding makes you nervous. The commander was easier. I just had to not die. This is forever. Not quite forever. She said it lightly, but they both felt the weight of those words. The lifespan problem had hung over them for the entire year. Valerians lived for centuries. Humans lived for decades. No matter how much they loved each other, biology was against them. Then 3 months ago, the Empress had called them to the palace. There is an ancient ritual, she had said, forbidden for thousands of years because it was considered too dangerous. But circumstances have changed. What kind of ritual? Do-Hyun asked. A life bond. Two beings share their essence, their life force. The longer lived gives up years. The shorter lived gains them. You would meet somewhere in the middle. Lyra's eyes went wide. Mother, that ritual was banned because it makes us mortal. Yes. The Empress looked at her daughter. If you do this, you will experience death. Real death. Not the peaceful fading we know, but the human kind, final and permanent. And I would live longer than any human in history, Dohyun said, but still die young by Valerian standards. Yes, you would have perhaps 150 years together. Maybe 200 if you're lucky. For him, that's 3 times a normal life. For you. The Empress looked at Lyra. It's a fraction of what you would have had. But we'd have it together, Lyra said softly. The Empress had given them time to think. Days turned into weeks. They talked about it constantly. The cost was enormous. Lyra would give up centuries of life. She would know that death was coming, something her species had evolved past, but she would have those years with him. In the end, they had both agreed. Quality over quantity. Time together over time alone. The ritual had happened 1 month ago. Dohyun remembered the pain of it, like fire in his veins as Valerian life energy merged with his human cells. And Lyra's face, tears streaming down as she felt mortality settle into her bones for the first time. When it was over, they had both collapsed. When they woke up, everything felt different, sharper, more precious. Now, standing in the garden, Dohyun could feel it. His body was stronger, his mind clearer. He would live to see 150, maybe more. And Lyra, he looked at her and she smiled. There was something different in her eyes now. A kind of urgency that hadn't been there before. She understood now what humans felt every day. That time was limited. That every moment counted. Are you sure? He asked her. Really sure? You gave up so much. I gave up time alone for time with you. That's not giving up. That's choosing. She pulled him toward the ceremony hall. Now come on. We have a galaxy to witness this. The wedding was unlike anything either species had done before. It blended human and Valerian traditions into something completely new. The hall was decorated with earth flowers and Valerian crystals. Music from both worlds played together. Ambassador Hyejin stood with the Empress on the platform. Representatives from dozens of species filled the hall. Even Kale was there, having become an unexpected friend in the months after the war. Dohyun wore a traditional human suit with Valerian symbols woven into the fabric. Lyra wore a dress that seemed to shift between human white and Valerian silver. The ceremony began. The Empress spoke first. In all my long life, I never understood what humans meant when they spoke of love. We Valerians form partnerships, alliances, bonds of duty. But love? She looked at her daughter. My daughter taught me. Love isn't about time. It's about choice. Choosing someone again and again every day, no matter the cost. Ambassador Hyejin spoke next. Humans have a saying. Love is patient, love is kind. But I think there's more. Love is brave. It's choosing someone even when the math doesn't make sense, even when the universe says it's impossible. She smiled at Dohyun. This young man has shown us that humans don't let impossible stop them. Then it was time for vows. Dohyun went first. His voice shook a little, but his words were clear. Lyra, when I first met you, you asked me why I saved you. I said it was because you needed help. That was true, but it wasn't complete. The real truth is that humans are built to help each other. We're social creatures who can't survive alone. We need connection like we need air. He took her hands. You gave me something I didn't know I needed. You showed me that connection isn't limited by species or culture. That understanding can bridge any gap. I promise to spend every day of our life together, being worthy of that gift. Whether we have 50 years or 200, I promise to make every single one count. Lyra's turn came. She spoke in a mix of Valerian and English, her telepathy letting everyone understand. Dohyun, my species has spent thousands of years trying to perfect ourselves. We engineered away pain, suffering, and death. We thought we were advancing. But we forgot something important. We forgot how to truly live, her voice caught. You taught me that life without risk is just existence. That love without the possibility of loss is just companionship. You made me mortal, and in doing so made me alive. She smiled through tears. Every species here today wanted me for different reasons, power, alliance, status. You wanted me just because I'm me. That's the rarest gift in the universe. I choose you. Not once, but every day for the rest of our lives. The Empress performed the final binding, a Valerian ritual that connected their minds permanently. From now on, They would always feel each other's presence, no matter how far apart they were. Ambassador Hygiene added a human tradition, having them exchange rings, simple gold bands from Earth, inscribed with Valerian symbols. "I now pronounce you bonded for life," the Empress said. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Hygiene added. "You may kiss." They did, and the hall erupted in celebration. Dozens of species cheering in dozens of different ways, all united in witnessing something unprecedented. The reception that followed was chaos in the best way. Human food and Valerian dishes mixed on tables. Music from Earth played alongside Valerian harmonics. Kale tried human alcohol and declared it surprisingly effective. Sunwoo taught a group of young Valerians how to dance the way humans do. With energy and no coordination, Yuna cornered Dohyun near the end of the night. "You know what you two did, right? You changed everything. We just got married. You created the first true union between humanity and an elder species. You proved that we can not only coexist but become family. Do you know how many mixed species couples have applied for that life bond ritual in the last month?" Dohyun's eyes went wide. "How many?" 47. "And that's just the start. You gave people hope that love doesn't have to be limited by biology." Later, when the celebration finally wound down, Dohyun and Lyra stood on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That a year ago I was just an engineer installing communication systems. Now I'm married to an alien princess, helped end a war, and apparently started a social revolution. Is it too much?" "It's perfect," he pulled her close. "What about you? Any regrets?" Lyra was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I felt it today, during the ceremony. My heart beating faster because I was nervous, my hand shaking because I was excited. These feelings I never had before because we engineered them away." She looked up at him. "I felt alive, truly, completely alive. No regrets, even though you'll die now?" "Really die?" "Especially because of that. You humans understand something we forgot, that knowing something will end makes it more precious. I have maybe 200 years with you. That's nothing by Valerian standards. But it's everything to me because it's real, because I chose it." They stood together watching Earth and Valaris visible in the same sky, two worlds that had found a way to exist together. "What happens now?" Dohyun asked. "Now we live. We work, we explore. The galaxy is huge and we have time to see it together. Not as much time as you would have had alone, but infinitely more meaningful time than I would have had without you." Dohyun thought about that, about the Empress asking if he was worth the cost, about Voth calling humans primitive, about all the species who thought humans were weak because they lived short lives. They were wrong. Humanity's strength wasn't in living long. It was in living fully, and now through Lyra, the galaxy was learning that lesson too. 6 months later, Dohyun and Lyra opened an academy on the Crossroads station. They called it the Bridge. It taught young beings from all species how to work together, how to understand each other, how to build connections across impossible differences. The first class had students from 20 different worlds. Some lived for centuries, others for decades. It didn't matter. They learned to see past the differences and find the common ground. On the first day, a young student asked Lyra why,